listen up, y'all. It's the queen of automation, Meghan and here to give you inspiration. Founders and business owners gather round. I'ma show you how to build systems that'll astound. Streamline your processes, no need for...
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Queen of Automation podcast, where we talk about why technology is only good when it works and how I help you make it work. Except for today, we're going to jump outside of our comfort zone a little bit, and I'm very excited to introduce Tim Jones because first of all, he's won an Emmy, so how freaking cool is that? And he works in the healthcare space, but it's not like you would think. And he does such a fantastic job of breaking the mold of healthcare with his video skills and what he's done over his career. It's such a cool story. So I can't wait for him to tell you about that. And then we're going to kind of jump into a little bit of a mindset shift on how people think about systems. Systems does not have to mean technology. And so Tim and I are going to have a fantastic conversation about that today, about how systems and using your mindset and creating kind of systems that way can also help you grow your business, improve your lifestyle, and all of that stuff. So Tim, please tell everybody where you're calling in from, say hello, and then, of course, tell us all about your fabulous journey to, what would you call it? Emmy-winning stardom? I don't even know. That sounds so cheesy, but it is what it is, right?
So yeah, thanks. So I am calling in from Cleveland, Ohio. Longtime viewer, first time guest here on the podcast. I think you do a great job, and it's always a lot of fun to watch and learn about so many other people, other things, and happy to be here. So my story is I grew up here in Ohio, went and got a creative writing degree, which I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with, but it sounded like a lot of fun because I've always been drawn to story. And once I graduated, the weather here was just so bad. My wife wasn't my wife at the time, but we went through our creative writing program together. She moved to LA, and one day we were talking and she's like, God, it's so beautiful here. It's like 90 degrees and it was 20 below. Here it's like, it's 110 degrees warmer where you are today.
Why are you still there?
Right? And she's like, well, you could move here. And it occurred like, I could? Really? I guess I could. So I moved to LA and started working at the studios at Warner Brothers. They started up Disney had made like $1 billion with The Lion King. And so Warner Brothers thought, hey, we're going to start a feature animation division too. And I'm like, I love animation. I don't know anything about it, but I'll be a PA and go and learn. And I just got sucked in. It was just awesome. I loved the people. I loved everything about it. It's such an interesting, art form and the way that you can tell stories. And so for many years, I worked in feature film and television. And then around the .com era, everything went sort of online and sort of, went in that direction and started learning new technologies there and started working. This was very early on where like, hey, we can put a show on the internet. Like, really? Okay. So we started, doing some stuff like that with ESPN and won an Emmy for some work we did with Mike and Mike in the Morning, their morning radio show. And
oh my God, I actually know that show. I didn't even know that was a show.
Yeah, so that was so Mike and Mike in the Morning. So we did a bunch of really fun animated shorts around, their crazy stories. And so, cool. Did that and was just having an awesome time. It was so much fun, doing all of that. And then, about 20 years ago, Starlight Children's Foundation, I was at this point, I was the COO of a digital agency. At one point, we had like 200 employees. It was a big shop, and we were doing a lot of fun stuff, mostly entertainment. Yeah. And then Starlight Children's Foundation came, and they said, you know what? We're having a really hard time talking to teenagers about cancer and chemotherapy. And I thought, wow, yeah, that must be hard. Like, well, we've got all this print material, but they don't want to read that. Starlight
exactly.
They thought that, well, reality style TV is very popular with that demographic. So they'd gone out and shot some video of following teens through their journey, through their chemo journey. But maybe there was a little too much reality, seeing other kids going through that, losing their hair, being very sick. And it was a little off-putting, and it didn't really resonate with their target audience the way they hoped it would. And they thought animation might be a great way to get this important information across without scaring everybody off. And I thought,
Right.
wow, this is just such a different challenge. But yeah, I'm in. I'm all in if we can make a difference. So we created this series called Coping with Chemo, and it did very well. It was award winning, and over the years we did a lot more work with Starlight. And then one year they said, "Hey, we're having our annual banquet. Steven Spielberg's our chairman emeritus. Carrie Fisher's our annual spokeswoman. She's going to
Yeah.
be there. It's down in Beverly Hills. You should come down. It'll be a nice evening." And that night, at one point, a young girl came up on stage and she said, "You know what? When I was 12, they told me I had cancer and I just gave up. And I thought my life was over and that I was going to die. And I was really sad and really depressed. I didn't know what to do. And then somebody told me about these videos and I went and I watched them and I saw that I wasn't the only kid who had gone through this, that others had gone through it and they fought and they survived. And it just gave me the strength and the courage to go through my chemo. And now I'm in remission. And I just feel like those videos saved my life." And it was that cartoony light
Wow.
bulb moment that goes
Right.
off. Wow. The things that I love telling stories. I love animation. I love everything about that. But I didn't realize that you could do anything more than maybe just entertainment. And I really
Yeah.
didn't realize how powerful it could be to change someone's life. And so that sort of put me on the path. I went and got my, my MBA and started a company called Health Nuts Media 15 years ago. And since then, we've been focused primarily on pediatric patient education. So we help kids in the hospital understand what they're going through, what their bodies are, what's happening in their bodies. But we use narrative storytelling. We use a lot of the tools in animation to help overcome fear, to overcome literacy and health literacy barriers, to bridge cultural gaps, a lot of different things. So anyway, that's what we do. That's the origin story.
It's such a cool story though, because when you think, at the end of the day, technology is technology, right? Like whatever kind of digital technology you're using, it's complex and it's complicated, or at least, that's what people think. And there's
Right.
so many people out there like yourself that are using these digital tools to better, right? To make things better for a certain group of people, or, the environment or stuff like that. It's amazing when you can find that, right? When you can find how to use all of these resources and turn them into actually shaping the world and making it a better place for either like a large group of people or just the environment in general, like, like removing ocean plastic, like that crazy machine that's out there, like in the middle up by Alaska, like picking up all the, I don't
Right.
even remember what it's
Yeah.
called right now, and it's totally escaping me. But there's
Right.
all these things out there that people don't realize, because when you think about technology, you just think about business, right? Like, and you think about these corporations, it's just a business thing, and it's part of
Sure.
business, but it's
Right.
not. Like, it
Right.
doesn't have to be just part of business. You can actually make it emotional. You can tie it to emotions.
Right.
It takes a little bit more work, I think, and a little bit more strategy and a little bit more systemization, but you absolutely can do it. And at the end of the day, what I think about when I think about you, because I always talk to people on this show about work-life balance, because I always like to get everybody's opinion about
Mhm.
work-life balance, quote unquote. Everybody knows my opinion. I don't really
Right.
believe in it. You're one person. You can't really separate your life from,
Right.
you can't separate. Otherwise, we'd all be doing it. We'd all have clones, and the clone would be over there doing all the
That's
shit that I hate, and everything else
that's
would be
right.
over
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah.
In your experience, that is like, it is like a whole new meaning, like work life balance, because these kids and these people, these kids that you're working with are like, they're living it, right? Like they are living, they're in it, and it's a totally different mindset. And I would love to get your take on it, because how did you do that? Like, because you're hearing sad stories all the time, and you're hearing but also like really encouraging stories like you changed my life. How did you get through all of that and like go home at the end of the day and try to kind of separate it, if you will, because you can't
Right.
really.
Right. And that's why I look at nurses, I look at child life that are really
Yeah.
there at the front lines, and I
Yeah.
think I don't know that I'm strong enough to do that. I don't know that I could be there at the bedside every day and see all these things
Yeah.
happening. And yet some of the, pediatric oncology nurses are the most positive people I've ever met in my life,
They're
right?
amazing.
It's just, that mindset. And sometimes, I think we all have our different gifts, and, maybe in a different life, I could have gone into medicine, but maybe I'm not smart enough to do, to do all that. And that wasn't my calling. But I really do think that, story is one of those things. When I think about my life, at least the books that I've read, the movies that I've watched, the things
Yeah.
that have impacted me the most deeply. Of course, there's, those people that are, that your family and your closest friends, and they have such a big impact. But the story, and we can talk about that a little bit more later, about the systems and the things that
Absolutely. We will
really make a
absolutely do that.
difference. Because to me, that is really what story is. Story is a system, right? And it's a communication, and it's a very special way to communicate
Yeah.
that works in different ways than just the facts, right? And if you just give me a data dump of all the facts, here's what's happening with your health, and here's what's
Yeah.
going on, I don't know that it really helps. And that's what we talk about a lot. Healthcare has a lot of data, and unfiltered, what good does it do? Right? I don't even understand what it means. I don't understand sometimes what's in it for me. And I think a lot of patients feel that way. So to be able to take all that data, make it personal, make it contextual, to help people understand sort of what's going on, and then envision that future of, okay, now if I do these certain things now I can picture this future where I've overcome this injury, or I'm controlling this illness, and I'm back in control of my life. And so there's a lot of different ways that, using storytelling, and then within animation, all the visual, tools
Yeah.
and things like that we do to help overcome fear, to help, bridge those cultural gaps, to help build empathy so that we can understand what someone else is experiencing and feel that empathy for the journey that they're going through. I think there's a lot of different ways it's a very systems approach, if you will, in your
Exactly.
language,
That's a perfect pivot.
right?
It's a
So,
perfect pivot because I was just going to say that. That's a perfect pivot into talking about systems because everything that you just said, you don't have to be the next Tim Jones and be working in creating animated videos in the healthcare space to try and tap into emotions. Every single customer or buyer or whatever it may be. So the goal for every single brand should be to build lifetime customers. You don't just want buyers. Buyers, I think of buyers as somebody who comes and they buy your product, your service, whatever it is, one time and then they
it's
leave, right? That's a
transactional.
buyer, right? It's very transactional. It's very non emotional. It's very like, I need this right now at this time. And that's it. Lifetime customers, they're in it, right? They are connected to your brand. They have an emotional connection. You
Right.
are solving their problem. You are fixing their pain point. They love, like, even think about e-commerce brands like with clothing. You love your t-shirt brand because of XYZ. It's soft when you put it on. Whatever. You like the colors. There is an emotional connection. So
Of course.
everything that you just said is what should be built into every single brand on the planet.
Of
Like,
course.
you need to tap into an emotional connection. You need to tell a story. You need to convey to your customers in a storytelling way and manner why whatever it is the best. Right. And so I
Yeah,
would
and
love to absolutely hear more about that because you kind of went into it a little bit. But again, healthcare has so much data and what you're doing is so personal and so emotional. Walk us through the process a little bit, because I'm assuming, in my head, I'm assuming there's like an interview process, or you're collecting data somehow from, I don't know, like 1,200 patients in the cancer ward of whatever XYZ all experienced this, and this. Okay, so how can we
Right.
take that experience and turn it into an emotional story that will help them cope? Am
Right.
I kind of spot on?
Yeah, I mean that's just it. So one of the projects we did quite a bit of work with the VA
Ooh,
over many years. And so they've done a really good job of collecting a lot of data. And so one of their problems is that if you look at it clinically, they actually provide really good clinical care. And
yeah,
the doctors and the clinicians that they have do a really good job. And veterans at each point, like, yes, I like that doctor, I like this doctor. What they didn't do a very good, because it's the largest integrated health system in the
yeah,
US, and it's very much a hub and spoke system. And these organizations, these silos get built up, and I do my thing, and then the next person does their thing, but we don't
right.
really do a good job of communicating what that journey looks like. And so a lot of the frustration comes from not knowing what happens next. And so
For
for
the
any of
customer,
us,
you mean, or for the
for the
customer?
customer,
Jeez,
right?
that's not horrible. It's not the customer, for the patient. Excuse
For
me.
the right,
We probably
you
shouldn't
know,
call patient customers. They
you're
don't
right.
want
I
to be
mean,
there.
I think in some ways there's a lot of that conversation of, well, healthcare talks about it different, like it's a patient, it's not a customer, but maybe
Yeah,
that's a downfall, because when you don't
yeah,
think about, well, it is a customer, they are consuming your goods and services, and you really should
yeah.
think of it like a brand
And a
that you want,
person. Think of them
right?
as a person and not a patient. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because there is so much more to them than just their diagnosis. And that more and
Yes.
more is coming out. I think we talk a lot about those social determinants of health. And there's certain things, obviously, that your doctor and your hospital and everything does. But really, you are so much more than that. And most of us don't really think in those terms. Like, yeah, I went to the doctor, I was in the hospital, but I'm not a patient, really. I'm a person who's, going through this experience. And so, the VA did a really good job at putting together research about why, what that journey was like, what the veterans misunderstood, what they liked, what they didn't like. And I guess one of the simplest ways to say this is, you walk into the waiting room and there's a sign on the wall that says, the wait time is about an hour and a half. And when they call your name after an hour, you're pleasantly surprised. Like, okay, I thought my wait time was an hour and a half, and you're seeing me in an hour, and I'm happy, right? You walk into the waiting room and there's no sign, and you think, maybe I'll wait a half an hour. And then after an hour, they call your name and you're upset, because
Right.
in your
There's no
mind,
expectation.
right,
Right.
you have not set that expectation. And so you're disgruntled, you're upset, so they haven't done a very good job at managing expectations and letting what is going to happen. And I think, to your point, every brand in the world, part of that is managing those expectations, letting people know, this is what we do. This is what you can expect from us. Here is our brand promise, that when that when you engage with us, here's what you can expect. And the interesting thing, and I think this goes for a lot of businesses, was, even though these videos that we created were for veterans, they were also for staff, because this idea that, okay, what is the brand promise that we're making to the veterans? What do we want them to think? Maybe you don't work over in that department, and so you are, you are looking at it just through your narrow lens. But to be able to see that wider picture, to understand what that is, what the brand promise from a VA perspective is
Yeah.
to that veteran, this will help you as a staff member, and it will help the veteran. It will help everyone. So that's just one example, I think, of what that what just that clear communication is. Now you can just give them a handout or
Which is
don't,
horrible, right? Those
right.
handouts are awful, and they're
Or
so long, and they're so like, and that's, you know what's funny too about this whole thing, like about everything that you just said, is that when you, at least from what I found, right? Because I work with technology, right? One of
right.
the most frustrating things on the planet, for heaven's sakes, I couldn't even get into my podcast today, so I'm on my phone. We had that conversation before we hit record, right? If you are transparent with your customers, your patients, whoever you are providing services for or
Right.
products to, whatever, if you would
Right.
just manage expectations and just tell them the truth and you're 100% transparent about it, they are less angry.
Yep.
So,
Right.
like for shipping, like if something's going to take 2 weeks to get here, 3 weeks to, just tell me, right? Like,
Exactly.
fine, whatever, I will wait. I'll probably still buy the thing. If I really want the thing, I'm still going to buy it, even if it takes
That's
three
right.
weeks to get here.
Right.
Same thing with services. Now, it's so challenging in the kind of the healthcare space, in the medical space, because if you're truly having a problem where you have to be there, right? Like nobody wants to be in the hospital, nobody wants to be at the doctor's
Right.
office. So if
Right.
you're truly in a situation where you're doing, you're there because of something really bad or something, like you have to have surgery or you have a chronically, ill, you're chronically ill and you have a disease. How do you think they could better that? Because that, I will say, when my dad was sick and on his way out of this world, it was really frustrating because there was a few staff members that were awesome and loved them to death, but most of them, it was so transactional and so
Right.
like linear. And so, until it hit hospice, which is the greatest organization in the world,
Right.
they are
Right.
amazing. Everything that we're just talking about, that is what they do. They
Right.
tell stories, they go above and beyond at every single step of the way. And now, that final life preparation, which is, I don't know how we got to this morbid part, part of our podcast, but it's true because I feel like think about that from a customer service standpoint too. Like if
Right.
your customer is on their way out, what can you do to go above and beyond to make sure that they don't leave, that they want to
Right.
continue your services, your products, whatever? It's the same thing. Healthcare is obviously just in an amplified setting.
Right.
And that's the coolest thing that you said about the VA because it's very true. I feel like a lot of well, I mean, I guess now that I'm going to take a step back because, like you said at the top of the hour, the nurses are so amazing. They're also just exhausted. So
Right.
many
Yeah.
of them are
No.
overworked and they're
Right.
working ridiculous hours because there's not enough nurses in
Right.
the United States. I mean, we just don't have enough staff to help the doctors and or to help the healthcare industry in general, that they're tired, right? Like they're fatigued. And at the end of the day, it's not that they don't want to be good humans and be emotional and be connected. They're probably just kind of over it, which
But right.
sucks. It's like,
Yeah.
how do we
And that
fix
burnout
that?
is
How
real.
can we?
Right.
Yeah, and I feel
Right.
like, but I feel like some, like your animated videos, those types of videos help that, right? Because let's say, Nurse Megan is exhausted and I really have this patient who I really need to spend more time with. And I can't, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. But
Right.
I've got this really amazing Health Nuts media video that will put a smile on this child's face or when, and play some videos. And I feel like that is kind of where you help out in that sense. And maybe you don't, but that's kind of where I'm seeing it in my mind is there's so many amazing ways that your media fits into that world that helps not just the patients.
Right. Yeah. And so it really is. So we look at that as being a tool for nurses and child life. And so one example you brought up with hospice. And so again, working with the VA, as veterans were sort of getting to that point, part of what they wanted to do was have a consult and talk to veterans about, is this the right next step for you? And what they found was many veterans are like, I don't want to talk about that. Right? No. There was just, I'm putting up a wall, don't want to talk about it because this thought is you're just shipping me off to die. And I like,
Yeah.
it's something I really don't even want to talk about. And so again, having an animated video that could okay, it's just a way to get into that story, to let people know what hospice really is versus what it is in their mind. Also, a lot of the research that they did was the veterans weren't always so concerned about themselves, but they certainly didn't want to be a burden on their family. And so when you sort of highlight the burden, if you don't go into hospice, the burden you put on your family is tremendous. Use this resource because that will greatly benefit not only you, but take all of this prep because your family is not prepared and not equipped and not trained to deal
Yeah.
with this, but hospice is. And so a short animated 3-minute animated video went from veterans, I don't want to talk about this, to almost 100%. Yes, I will take the consult.
Wow,
And
that's
so
amazing.
that's just one of those ways. And you think, okay, well, within the system, so you think about the system, as we know, there's just all this wait time, right? You're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting. And then the clinician comes in and they've got 6 minutes, 3 minutes. And so this idea that you can use technology that is going to help someone help prepare that conversation. So same with children, right? So this idea, we had a nurse once like, okay, pre-surgical, I need to go in, I need to do all these things with the child before we go off to surgery. I go in and they're just so frightened that they're crying. I can't do, I can't do anything that I need to do. Of course, the parents are freaking out. Everything gets delayed. It's a show for everybody, right? And so having these pre-surgical videos, a very age-appropriate animated video that, okay, for the hours and hours that you're waiting beforehand, now you can start to educate yourself to know what's coming up, to know what's happening. The nurse said, okay, we pulled up the video, they watched it, I came back to the room. They're smiling now. They're, that fear is gone. We can go through what we needed to go through. She went off to surgery, smiling, waving. And this was just a way that technology and communications can be used
Yes.
to help
Man,
the process, right?
I
So,
wish that I had something like that. So a few years ago, and so I have 3 teenage boys. Anybody who's known me for more than 5 minutes knows that because they hear some of the boy
right,
stories. So, and my middle son is autistic. And so that's a whole nother layer of complexity just in
right,
personality and everything that's happening with his life. And he had surgery a few years ago. All I'm going to say, we don't have to go into, is that it was a very boy oriented surgery. Let's just go with that.
mhm,
I'll let you guys figure it out. And it was terrifying. I mean, we're in the UW Madison hospitals, and it's an amazing hospital. It's one of the
right,
top
yeah,
hospitals in the country. So I wasn't worried there, but here's this kid having, again, for boys, this is a very sensitive subject, right? And
right,
so this doctor and nurses, the doctor comes in and explains to my son Riker exactly what is going to happen. That was the worst thing she probably could have done because then he just freaked out.
right,
And
right,
because no, you're not doing that. And
right,
I gave him, we gave him his tablet and he had a Switch and stuff to play, and we kind of just gave him video games to kind of distract him. And
right,
that's the kind of thing that I think your videos help with because they're creating the distraction. They're creating the distraction in the mind because to a child of that age, because he's about a few years younger mindset wise,
right,
a
right,
cartoon would have been perfect.
right,
Couldn't
right.
you have done that in a cartoon? No, but he's 16, actually just turned 17. So it's like they come at him like a 17-year-old. I'm like, no, you can't do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And so they did a really amazing job as far as the autism is concerned and making sure that he was comfortable that way, sensory
Right.
wise. But
Yeah.
as far as trying to explain the procedure, and then you've got him and my husband sitting in the room, both of who are boys that this thing has happened. They're all like,
Right. Yeah.
the shock.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Right.
okay, there
Right.
had to have been a better way to explain this to the
Exactly.
males in the room of what is going on, And
Exactly.
so totally get it. Everything you're saying makes sense because it was, obviously, eventually, you get him calmed down and he was fine and he went back and everything was great. But
Right. Right.
some of these sensitive procedures or cancer stuff or when it comes to surgery especially, there's got to be a better way,
There's a
especially for
right.
kids to
Yeah. Yeah.
explain this stuff.
Right, exactly. And so that's why, like, okay, so you can make a video, but then why animation? Why, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
different reasons
because kids like
there.
cartoons,
But kids do, adults do. I mean, you
comic
look at,
books.
right? You look at statistically, like, TV's film, everybody loves animation, and it can
Yeah.
break down a lot of, you can do things in animation that you couldn't do in other things. So going back to the coping with chemo series we did,
Yeah.
teenagers just talking about that experience in one of the episodes, and some of the volunteers that we were talking about who had gone through it, like, okay, you lose your hair and then you've got these wigs, and it feels like you've got a cat on your head, right? And of
Yeah.
course, then in animation you can literally draw that cat on the head, and it's an icebreaker, right? Like, okay, they got me. Like, okay,
Or it
that's
can be a hippopotamus or a
right.
dog. The main
Right. I
character can be
felt
an
that
animal.
way,
Like it
right?
doesn't have to be a human. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you can push things to an extreme to make a point, break down, people's, fears, and then cope with them. A lot of cultural. We were doing a study with, this was immigrant Latino women in South Central Los Angeles, had the same incidence of breast cancer as white women, but I think a 4 times incidence of death at the same age and stage. And so it was really about early detection, and sort of teaching self-breast exam and early detection is so crucial, right? And so going in and teaching that through the churches and the community centers and stuff like that.
Uh-oh.
So anyway, they were, again, it was a very important thing to teach about early detection and how to do a self-breast exam. And so it would bring these
It's
women
so
into
amazing to me.
right, bring them into into, say, the community center and show a video, and the women are just getting up and walking out of the room, and the um the researchers are like, what's happening? And so they talk to the community leaders, and they talk to the women. It's like, there's men in the room, there's a bare breast on the screen.
Yep.
It's just so culturally inappropriate, to do this. Well, what if we did it with animation, and it's just a silhouette, and it's just showing a technique without any of the photorealism? And yeah, perfectly acceptable. So lots of different reasons why, animation, especially in healthcare, can just, like, oh, it's uncomfortable to talk about, or that's culturally inappropriate, or that's too scary, or lots of different ways where animation can just break down those barriers and help alleviate some of those fears, bridge that communication gap, help people understand what they're going through. So anyway, that's
I
why
think this
we
is
do what we do.
so we're at time and I don't want to take up too much
Okay.
of everybody's time. So what I do want to talk about quickly before, and then I'm going to have you tell everybody where they can get a hold of you, because I have a feeling that this is going to spark people wanting to know how they can get involved. Like, and I know that you're not technically nonprofit, but you're still a good person and a good person in resource for people who want to get involved and kind of help the healthcare system do
Right.
better at being emotionally connected to their patients and their customers, if you will. This right here, this whole episode, for all of you that are listening still, this is all about big data. Big data can actually be a storytelling tool, okay? I talk about this all the time. You can tell stories with your data, and it doesn't just have to be healthcare, it could be any business that you're in. But data storytelling is real. Your data does provide you a story. It gives you trends. It tells you what is happening over time. This is why I tell people, stop watching your numbers on a weekly basis. That is the worst thing you could do. Because when you
Right.
see a
Yeah.
spike on a
Yeah.
Tuesday and then Friday when everybody's gone for the weekend boating, and you wonder why your
Right.
engagement is down, well, no shit. Stop doing that. But when you look over a six
Right.
month,
Yeah.
9 months, 12 month period, and then you see these trends of when, like monthly topic and like that kind of stuff, and your engagement and your content is hitting harder here, here, and here, it's so much more valuable. And this was the perfect episode to showcase that, because that's exactly what you guys did. You took a whole crap ton of data and were able to drill it down and create stories for individual, like, cancer patients and VA and like all of these different people, because that's the way that this data works. And
Right.
healthcare, like
Right.
you said, has massive amounts of data. So I'm sure there's so many stories we could glean out of there.
Right.
But I digress. I want you to
And
tell
that's where the
people.
and that's where the future is going. I think this idea of being able to take that data, make it contextual to me, not just anybody,
Yep.
but see where I've been, where I'm going, and tell that story for me. It's a very exciting thing to be able to do. So
Absolutely. Tell people where they can find you. I mean, we're all obsessed with LinkedIn on this podcast, so I'm sure that's
yeah,
one
exactly.
place.
So
But
I'm
also
on
give people your give people
yeah.
your website
So
address and stuff like that too, and we'll drop it in the show notes, and then there'll be
okay,
clickable
yeah.
links so that people can go find you.
Yeah, so healthnutsmedia.com. So you can come and check out what we do. There's contact there. I'm also on LinkedIn. So happy to talk to anybody. And like you said, we are very mission oriented. There's so many people that need help. We want to help as many people as we can and do our little thing is what we do. We make animation and use storytelling, but we want to use that, use those skills to the best that we can. And
Yeah, and I highly encourage everybody to go check out his content on LinkedIn because it's really good. He does a lot of really good storytelling on LinkedIn as well, and brings like the couple of stories that you've heard here doesn't even hit the surface of the amount of stories that he has. Go check out Tim on LinkedIn. Go check out his website. Reach out to him. Follow his content. And remember, guys, technology is only good when it works. And see, even ours doesn't work sometimes. We will see you all next week. Thank you, Tim.